So again, my name is Jacob. The founder of Jamani Corporate Group, LLC, and I'm so excited to be here. JamanInclusive is one of the platforms that we have with the support and assistance of Xiong Lee, which she's also on this call. And our goal is to actually bring people together who are passionate and excited about emerging markets through conversations like this, bringing really high-profile individuals and very amazing entrepreneurs to come and share the stories and the amazing work that they're doing in their communities. And also, the goal is also to connect with people from across the world who are passionate about and excited about building emerging markets, irrespective of where they are. So I'm really excited and grateful that you guys were able to make it at this time. And I'm more than looking forward to having a conversation with Pelkins, who, if you guys may have seen the email, it's just a really amazing entrepreneur and someone that we can all learn from. So without further ado, we're gonna watch a video of Pelkins, and he's just gonna give a snapshot of what he has accomplished at his time at MIT, and there's so much more to that. But so we're gonna start with that. Then right after that, I'm gonna let Pelkins talk a little bit about himself, his story, his work at CassVita, how he founded it, and his time at his time at Harvard, his work has been doing there. And later on, we're going to have Q&A session. We have some questions submitted, but please feel free and be as comfortable as possible to ask Pelkins questions. I know he's in the middle of his finals, and we're very appreciative that he was able to take the time out of his schedule to talk to us. So we're just going to start with a short video, but I think this give you guys like a snapshot of what he has done. And I hope Pelkins, you don't get uncomfortable watching yourself on screen, but just give me 1 second. So let me get this out of the way. We're gonna get this.
In the future where I believe in the future where my great-grandkids are going to be surprised that there was a day when Africa was known to be a poor continent. My name is Pelkins Ajanoh. I'm a senior studying Mechanical Engineering and Robotics here at MIT. I was born in Limbe, which is a coastal city in the southwest region of Cameroon. So I lost my dad when I was like 13. So my older brother stepped up really quick as like the father figure in the house, and coming to MIT was really one of his ideas, because he was the one who encouraged me and told me about the SAT and all the things we needed to do to prepare. And yeah, I give him credit for that, and of course he feels really proud about it. I'm currently the president of the African Students Association. What we're really interested in is building this community of Africans and just creating this platform where people, not only Africans, but everyone interested in Africa, can come and learn more about the continent in terms of the culture, in terms of its history, in terms of its future. I like unconventional thinking. I Europe at the Media Lab, that's the undergraduate research opportunities, and the Media Lab has just been this amazing place where there are no bounds as to how much we can think. In as much as I'm interested in engineering, I'm also interested in rationality. I'm interested in people and how to think and how to make decisions. Humans have a very advanced sensory mechanism. So we have eyes, we have a sense of touch, we can smell things. But for a robot, you need to be able to incorporate all the sensory techniques and plan ahead of time. So in the broad spectrum of robotics, I'm specifically interested in autonomous vehicles. The whole point of engineering is solving problems. And the reason we solve problems is because problems get in the way of people living the life which they really want to. So I'm working with Sandbox. I've been funded by Sandbox to work on the project in Cameroon right now, which is all about adding value to a certain crop called cassava. A lot of the farmers working on this crop do subsistence farming, and that's because the crop has very rapid spoilage, so it is hard for them to do large scale. So what we're trying to do is incentivize them to be able to plant at a large scale, because they're guaranteed that the crop is going to be converted to more preservable forms. Coming to the United States and having people ask you questions which, while you were there, you didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about it because it was like the daily experience. So a lot of times in responding to those questions, it made me think more profoundly about the issues which are going on the continent, and I want to understand how we got to where we are today and where we're going in the future, of course.
So I hope you guys were able to get a sneak peek of what a privilege we have to have Pelkins here to share his story, and also just to have someone like him who has a very big vision, not just for himself, but for his home country of Cameroon. And most importantly, what he learns at one of the best schools in the world, from MIT to Harvard, to translate that into a startup and subsequently to help people on the ground through his amazing work at CassVita. So I'm just going to ask Pelkins a few questions to kind of help him share the story. And from there, we're going to open up to questions and answers, because I think that's the true essence of a platform like this. So, Pelkins, thank you so much for being here. Can you just, to begin with, tell us how you grew up in Cameroon? How was it like, for our audience to get a sense of who you are?
First, Jacob, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure as well on my end. I must confess, it was a little weird watching the video. I think the last time I watched it was like 3 years ago when it first was released at MIT. So it brought back some really profound memories, and I'm really grateful and glad you played that. So thank you. Second, you'd realize that I have two people in this meeting. I'm just one person. The thing is, I'm using a laptop that's been having issues, so I have a backup laptop which is actually on Zoom right now. In case this fails, I'll just go on the other one. So I see myself in two screens, which is also kind of weird. But I just want to let you know that, like, that's why you have two of me. Okay, now after all of that being said, I'm gonna get into the question. So so the first thing is I like the video and Jacob mentioned, I grew up in Cameroon. I think what's unique about Cameroon, especially with respect to other, I guess, African countries, it's diversity. So Cameroon has got over 300 ethnic groups, each one having a very unique language. And I mean, growing up in that diversity, I think this is actually looking retrospectively, had some global sort of experience and like interest, because surrounded by people from different cultures, even though it's like at a high level, it seems like the same people, but it's really diverse in many ways. So that's the first thing, which is more on the global, like broader, high level side of things. But on a more lower level, personal, family side of things was my mom and my dad played a really important and pivotal role in my upbringing. My mom is a businesswoman. My dad was a principal of an elementary school. I lost my dad when I was young, and my dad especially was the one who got me into a lot of math, and like he cared a lot about grades and like how well I did in school. On the other hand, my mom was more of like the soft skills person, like how I interacted with people. She made sure I was involved in community service, volunteering, and like interacting with my peers at different levels. So I think I'm very grateful for that, because it sort of gave me a balanced childhood growing up, like the person who gave me like inspiration to sort of find knowledge, which is my dad, and the person who gave me inspiration to understand the importance of community and giving back, which is my mom. So that really influenced me, and that's in many ways the foundation of how CassVita started, because when I came to the US, I came to a place like MIT. I had always dreamt to be in this place, and over time, when I saw people also very passionate about solving problems, but me juxtaposing my experience in the US versus Cameroon, I started to think, oh, like, well, I mean, there are many issues that could be solved. And being in a place like MIT where people are really interested in solving problems, I think it fueled that energy. So going back to my mom and my dad, MIT gave me, from my dad's side, that push to keep doing intellectual things like intellectual stimulation. From my mom's side, the community side of things, I started thinking, how can I use the knowledge I'm getting from this place to sort of create an impact in the community? And it all started with an internship I had at General Motors, where I worked in the self-driving cars team. And I was able to invent a new technology for calibrating radars for autonomous vehicles. And after that invention, after the patent, I had some sort of confidence boost that I could actually do something in my community. So that's how I actually so I guess the story started with intellectual stimulation at MIT from my dad, the personal side of things, which was my mom, community building. And then the icing on the cake was really this invention, which was like, now you can do something. So it's not just a thought. So why not solve a problem in your own community? So after this invention, I was like, how can I solve a problem in my community? And that's how I stumbled on agriculture, because in Cameroon, over 80% of the population is involved in some sort of agriculture. However, it contributes, I think, under 20% of the GDP. So that's a huge delta. And that seemed like an amazing opportunity to sort of impact people's lives, because like it's a very inefficient process. So if you could make this process more efficient, the level of impact you could create could be higher. So that's how it all started. When I had the idea of cassava, I called my co-founder, who's my childhood friend. I give him a lot of credit, because a lot of times the story is about me, but it's really about him, because I was still a senior at MIT wrapping up. I didn't have time to be in person. He did all of the heavy lifting. And after graduation, a lot of the things were set in place to sort of get the company to the next level. So that's really the story at as much of a summary as I can give so far. Yeah.
That was an amazing summary in a nutshell. There's some nuances in between that definitely we can cover in this short space of time. But I have to preface that as a former, as an MIT alum, you always have a backup plan. So it was great you have a laptop to go with that. But yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. I think that gives us like a foundation of kind of your mindset, but also that formative years that has led you to where you are today. I think one thing that I would like to know, and I think the audience too would like to know, is at MIT, we're the president of the MIT Africa Group. I know he has a specific name, so I apologize for that. How did that influence you? We saw a snippet of that in the video. How was that like leading that organization, and what was the impact that it had on you as you navigated through MIT and building CassVita?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is, before moving to the US, I had only lived in Cameroon. Cameroon was the only African country I'd lived in before. So coming to the US and meeting Africans from other countries was just in many ways very thrilling in many ways, because I got to learn about how unique each country is, but also how similar some of these cultures were. And I got to get more of like a continental view of the issues that were going on. And I think there was the aspect of like self reinforcement of like wanting to make a difference, because I came in, I wanted to make a difference. Now I met other people who wanted to make a difference. And being a part of this community was just really, it just had like this net positive outcome, where now you want to make an even bigger difference because you're now fueled by the people around you. Back to your question about leadership, I think as a result of this net positive reinforcing community, I got very interested in sort of leadership in the community. And like you mentioned, I was the president of the organization. It's the African Student Association. And I think what happened was, because of the energy, we started thinking about a bunch of initiatives to sort of push this idea forward. The first thing we actually started was called the Africa Learning Circle. The Africa Learning Circle was like the entrepreneurship and innovation arm of the African Students Association. And that's where we had Thursday meetings we had meetings every Thursday, and we'll discuss issues on the continent and like really get perspectives from different countries. And I think it is very holistic in many ways to sort of understand at a macro, but also at a micro level, what's really going on, what are the main industries that are at play, what's the next big thing in Africa. So through the Africa Learning Circle, we got to, and through these conversations, I also got more interested in this idea because it became apparent that like agricultural innovation, agri-tech is actually a big thing because the level of inefficiencies, we had similar stories when I shared what I was thinking about. Friends from Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya shared very similar stories. And I was like, wow, okay, this is actually validation that this idea makes sense. So through the Africa Learning Circle, I actually got validation for the idea. And I wouldn't end this without mentioning how far the Africa Learning Circle has gone today. We have over, I think, 3 companies that have spun out of that group. People have gone on to raise over $2 million in total fundraising so far, just from companies that started in that group. So I think the biggest lesson I learned from there is never underestimate small beginnings and like just normal conversations with your classmates. While they might seem inconsequential, over time, once this build up, once you create a whole community and ecosystem, it's sort of like creates this whole like idea where you get to the total is greater than the sum of the parts, right? More of the synergies. So that's really the big thing I learned from being a part of the African Students Association and founding the Africa Learning Circle.
That's amazing. That's incredible, and I'm hopeful that those are stories that has to be shared, and people have to. I mean, as you said, just small beginnings, right? And having that tight-knit group that can really have that net positive, right? I think that's incredible. Thanks so much for sharing that. I think a question that a lot of people ask is like, how did you get into Harvard, and how did that happen? But how was your experience at Harvard Business School as well as Harvard Paulson School of Engineering? I think that's what it's called now.
Yeah.
So by the way, Pelkins is doing a dual degree at Harvard University currently. He's completing his first year, a 2-year program. And I think just the curiosity out there is like, how was the process like? I know we're kind of deviating from entrepreneurship, but also how has the program helped you to build on your vision of being one of the people that want to transform the continent of Africa, beginning with agri-tech, and most importantly, what are like the resources, including your classmates, on how they're driving this empowerment from your alliance with MIT, the African group you had. How has that been so far at Harvard? So it's a 2-part question. One,
yeah,
how was the Harvard application process?
So if I understand this correctly, first part of the question is the process of applying and getting into a dual degree program. Yes. The second part is what are some of the resources and how have I been able to leverage them so far?
Exactly.
Thank you. So the first question, so the first part, I think personally, I feel like some of these things are better when you don't work towards being at Harvard. You work towards doing cool. Well, I wouldn't call it. Work towards doing the things you find interesting and cool. I think if you're working towards eventually getting admitted into a certain school, personally, I feel like it defeats the purpose because you're not authentic in the things you do. So I got into entrepreneurship because I saw an opportunity. I took it, made that move. I really enjoyed what I was doing. I loved it. And when I applied to Harvard, I told them this story of me finding something I was passionate about, enjoying it, making progress. And they resonated with the story. So for me, it's the causation is not really it's not like backward induction. It's not backward reasoning. It's not like I want to go to Harvard, therefore I should now do all these things. It's like I am doing all these things because I think they're really interesting and I love them and I think like I can make a difference. And hopefully that gets you into some of these places. And even if it doesn't, I think it's actually like you still have things you're passionate about, you still have a way you want to make a difference in the world, eventually you're going to like attract the people that are interested in similar things. They're gonna help you out over time. You'd get there. So I wouldn't necessarily say the end goal is going to Harvard. I think Harvard is really it's more of like a pipeline, not the goal, because it's like it enables you to get to the next position. And I don't think like making that the target is really the best idea. I think Harvard is one of the different pipelines you could take to get to where you want to get to as an entrepreneur. Now to Harvard, but that said, I also wouldn't underestimate the resources that Harvard actually offers for entrepreneurs. So I hope that's very clear that I wasn't like referring to the fact that it's not necessarily. I think it makes an enormous difference, like just being in this community. I've been a part of the Harvard Innovation Lab for the last year, and it's just been phenomenal. We won some grants, Social Impact Fellowship Fund, to improve some of our work last semester, and the mentors, just the community of entrepreneurs has just been phenomenal. So like a lot of the things that I would pay a lot of money to get the services for after graduation, now you have them for free. Like I get tax advising, how to file taxes for the business in the US, because we're also incorporated in the US. I get some of these very specific trainings and things which are very useful to our work, which otherwise would be very expensive to get. So in many ways, the Harvard ecosystem has just been really incredible in terms of the support, and also really trying to understand the market, because a lot of times, like coming from Africa and having a niche product, which is not necessarily B2B SaaS, like you really need to explain a little more about what's going on here. But like the patience that I've seen so far, I think it's just been incredible. So the iLab has been super helpful. In addition to that, there's the HBS specific, Harvard Business School specific Rock Center for Entrepreneurship. I've not really been a strong part of that because I focused a lot on the iLab. But it's also an amazing entrepreneurship ecosystem where they've got a lot of past founders who've gone on to build and scale incredible businesses that are making a difference in different fields. So in many ways, I'm very grateful, in as much as I think there are many paths, but I'm very grateful to be here and to be leveraging some of these resources. And then to add the last thing about the MSMB, I think the MSMB is very specifically tailored to entrepreneurship. So this also sort of like, we get like a fireside chats with VCs, with founders, just for them to share their journeys, both success journeys, but also failure journeys. And like you really get to learn what it's like to walk the talk. So in many ways, I'd consider this opportunity a big blessing, because it's helped us move to the next level. We want to make a difference in Africa, but we also want to make a difference globally, like have our products in the US as well, which like, especially in that ecosystem, the Harvard community has been very helpful in us understanding, navigating supply chains, like tax issues, filing for C Corps, building a team, all these very like hands-on things you have to do to get a business off the ground has been very helpful. Has been very much provided by this community that I'm grateful for. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I like your first answer with like, just do what you like. Then if that resonates, you get in. That's good. But if you don't get in, that's not the end of the world. And I think that's clear. And also thanks for sharing how your Harvard community has been helpful to you as well, kind of balancing that out. So I have one more question, then I'm going to introduce Sion. She actually has helped develop and design the program, and she has a few things to say. Then we're going to open up to Q&A. We have some questions that were already submitted online. So I'm just going to be switching back and forth. So I'm going to read one question online, then one person on here will ask a question. Then that will take us on average about 15 minutes so that we are time efficient. So the question I have now is, how was it like leaving the US and going back to the Southwest region and actually starting something? I know we always hear of, there's always this like unexpectedness, right? You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you'd co-founded this company with one of your childhood friends, but going back there, I'm guessing there were certain things that didn't go exactly how you expected. And probably had some assumptions that were debunked in some way, right? So can you just share a little bit of how that was and how you came, like how you resolved that, like how you were able to mitigate that and accept the reality of it, and to start the company?
Yes. I totally. I mean, I really resonate with your idea about assumptions, because the funny thing about it is, I always told myself I grew up in Cameroon. Like, there's nothing I'll see in Cameroon that I've never seen before. But you'll be surprised at how much you change and the country changes when you leave. So I was in the US for like 4 or 5 years before I went back to start. And like, first thing is, I was shocked in many ways about like how I would admit how impatient I got. In the US, it's instant gratification. You order on Amazon Prime, 2 days, you get it like instant, right? In Cameroon, of course, you're never, I mean, we're getting there, but like, it's not like you'd get something the next day delivered to you. So like, just little things like that, like adapting back, because I'd lived in this world where like, for the most part, like you could mainly get some of the basic things you needed. So I think like that's the first thing that was really shocking to me, because I always thought I know this country, I grew up in it, I would be able to figure that out. And to add to it, I mean, like administrative processes are much harder. Ageism is a thing in Africa, where as a young person, no one takes you seriously. Everybody thinks you're a kid. Like me and my co-founder were our early 20s when I went back. So like no one took us seriously when we would literally go to offices and sit down and have people come after us and get served before us, because like they look bigger, they look like they're more influential. So it's so many things about, especially administrative things, getting paperwork signed in offices, taking days for that to be done. So the reality of how hard it is, it's there. And I think the way to get across it is like finding allies. That's one of the things we did. Over time, I became friends with one of the ministers in Cameroon, and like he was also passionate about young people, like helping them to sort of improve and make a difference. He's really loved, is passionate about youth entrepreneurship. So the relationship worked out well, because we wanted someone like who would help us out when we got stuck, and he also was very interested in young people. So when we hit these roadblocks, many times we had to, I mean, we'll try all we can before we reach out to him. And when we get to the point where it's like, okay, like we have absolutely nothing to do about this, then we reach out. So getting allies, but also getting local people to be a part of the team really matters, because like this whole aspect of proximate leadership. So how proximate are you to the actual problem you're solving, right? So I think that's where my co-founder comes in, because I mean, when I came to the US, he stayed in Cameroon, and like he really understood how Cameroon works, because he went to university there. He took on leadership positions in the university. He really got involved. He started a business, an online restaurant business before we started CassVita. So he had a good understanding of how things were going. So most times he was the one who would be calming me down. He'd be like, "Hey, you've got to remember, this is Cameroon, okay? So like, nothing's wrong. It's just how the process works. Like, it's not like something's wrong with the business. You just have to have the patience that certain things are going to take time." On the flip side, though, I think the size of the market is actually worth some of the hardships, and like the opportunity as well in terms of commercialization, and like margins, and like, I mean, just a green market for the most part. I mean, I'm one of the people who believes Africa is the next frontier. By 2050, a quarter of the world's population is going to be on the continent, and that's an enormous market, over 2.5 billion people. So I think planting the seeds now and creating like a solid organization that stands the test of time is worth it. So despite all these challenges, we're still there, and we're thinking about expanding to other parts of the world. We're already expanding to other parts of the world, like the US. So yeah.
I'll do a shameless plug at the end. You guys, if you're on this call, you should order some CassVita product. But yeah, that's incredible, and yeah, I love that analysis of having someone who has been on the ground for that time period that can give you that that reality check. So thanks so much for sharing that. I'm gonna let Sion kind of introduce herself and give us the information that we need to know at the end of this session.
Okay, I think I should turn on my video to show my face.
No.
Hi, I'm Xin Lee. I'm currently working as an outreach partner at Jamani Corporate Group. And actually, I have a question to Pelkins. It's about an Africa itself. Africa has both sides, the darkness, such as starvation, climate change, lack of infrastructure, and etc. And it also has the possibility to prosper, such as human resources, agriculture, and diverse cultures, right? So, and I want to ask, what do you think is more important between eliminating the darkness or investing to the possibility?
That's a really good question. And first, thank you very much, Sion, for asking. I don't necessarily think that they're mutually exclusive. I don't think doing one sort of like excludes the other one. I feel like these are all pressing things, but I think maybe the order and the priority in which we do them is actually what makes a difference. We've been hearing a lot about, like, I guess I'll think about it in two ends, right? Number one, like manufacturing, so like agriculture, like all of this industries, and then number two, leapfrogging, which is the second thing you're talking about, like getting technologies that could get you from zero to infinity without necessarily going through the hoops of like what the West went, so it's cheaper. I don't necessarily think that they're like different. So like if we're trying to solve for the problems in the community, like manufacturing, like agriculture, industrialization, I think those are actually priorities. I think it's important to roll those out fast, but I don't think we should roll them out at the expense of leapfrogging, because there's also a huge economic advantage of, like, for instance, the telecoms industry, where like you could go from no telecommunications to wireless telecommunications without going through building huge physical infrastructure and with spending a lot of money that the West had to go through in like the second and the third industrial revolutions. So I think like I think we could do both. But if I were to be in the place to enact a policy, I think there's the priority would be, what are the issues in poverty, like climate change, agriculture. Those are pressing issues right now. And then maybe start ramping up slowly other technologies that could help us leapfrog.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your answer and your presentation. And for the participants, I have one notice. Now I'm gonna send you a link. Yeah, I just sent you the link in the chat. It's the feedback form. So for those who participated today, so please fill out the form. Yeah, that's all for me.
Thank you so much, Sion. So yeah, we're gonna just, so please check out the form, and this is gonna be at the end of the session. So so we have some questions online. I'm gonna ask one question online, then please, if you are here, we're gonna follow up with you on that. So another question we received, one of the questions we received online was, what is the most valuable mistake in the course of your entrepreneurial life?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll think of this as the biggest mistake. I don't know if I'll call it the most valuable mistake, because I don't know if we've recovered from it. It's valuable when you recover from it. I think for me, it's really not thinking big. I think starting a business in your 20s, not thinking big, number one, because you don't know much, like you've not had a lot of experience, but also number two, because you're timid, like you feel like you cannot do much. So I think there are a lot of things, like our initial packaging of the product. I think you could do a better job, branding, content management. We started with some subpar type packaging because we wanted to get things out of the way. We didn't really think like long term. So if I guess the biggest mistake was really thinking short term, and like, and that number one, like packaging was just one example, but you could actually extend that to fundraising as well. I think initially we were running after like investors, and not necessarily caring about how aligned they were to our business. So like we're a CPG business, so we need investors that have CPG experience. We need investors that understand Africa. We need investors that that like have some knowledge of the impact space, right? So initially we're just going for investors because we just wanted to get money. And I think if I were to do it again, I'll be very specific about the kinds of people I mean, of course, over time, we didn't work with some of these people, and I'm glad it eventually didn't happen. But if I were to do this again, I wouldn't waste time next time working with, or even like pitching to people that are not as aligned with to our business as, or wouldn't give us as much support as we'll need. So I guess, and that goes back to the whole idea of like being young, being timid, and like really like whatever opportunity you get, you take. But now I think whatever opportunity you get, you actually evaluate first and like make sure it makes sense to you. Even if it sounds very brilliant, I think you want to evaluate first before you make a decision.
So that's very, very well thought out answer I came up with. So I just want to give an opportunity for people here to ask a question as well. So if you have a question here, please feel free to ask. No pressure, please. There are more questions online as well. You can go with that. I see Kevin and Duncan.
I have a question.
Sure, sure.
Can I ask your future plan as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a good one. So the plan is to, so I'm graduating next year, 2022. Plan is to scale the business, get the business like maybe the next 4 or 5 years, and hopefully get acquired by maybe some other CPG business, like some Nestle or P&G or Unilever or something, and then try something else. I see myself as a little bit of a serial entrepreneur, but I'm guessing no more than 3 companies. I guess after that, you'd have to like sit back and like think about what next steps to take. But like that's really how I see it. I think there's room for innovation in many spaces, and over time, I think you need to make enough progress that you could. Because the thing about myself is, I think my philosophy is like you need to build an organization to the point where it no longer needs you. I think that's really success metric for me, right? If it always revolves around you, then I like the minute you're not there, it's dead, right? So how do you build something that outlives you? So like, how do you get it to the point where like you could sell it out to someone else, it's still functioning even without you being there, and then you try something else. So that's really how I see myself, and hopefully, yeah, we'll see what the future holds.
A question on that was submitted was, why did you choose Harvard? What was the reason why you chose Harvard?
Can I answer that question by asking a question?
Yeah, sure.
Like what do you recommend? The person who asked the question, what else? Like, what? I'm just kidding. But I chose Harvard because number one, I really wanted to come back to Cambridge. So in undergrad, I love this community. I don't know if you all know, but like Boston has the highest student per capita in the world. So student divided by landmass divided by student divided by area, like it's the highest. So it's just an amazing place, young, dynamic people. Yeah, so I wanted to come back to Boston, but also I wanted to try something else. I really loved MIT. I enjoyed it. I wanted to try something different, but back in Boston. So Harvard was one of the choices. I think what made Harvard stand out was the dual. Number one, they did the 2+2 program. So I could get into my MBA program as a senior in college. And that was like it's just de-risked the entrepreneurship path for me, because like if it failed, I knew I was going to come to business school anyways. So like Harvard really stood out to me because of this 2+2 program. That's one. But also I applied the same year they launched the MS MBA program. So I was the first cohort of students who got admitted into that program. And the MS MBA program also very much appealed to what I was looking for. So that's why I chose it.
Thanks for sharing that. I think the person who asked is on this round here.
I'm just kidding. By the way, I was just kidding. Yeah,
I think we'll give a shot to someone who has a question here. I know Kevin's mic is on mute.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure, Duncan, you can go ahead.
So Pelkins, my question, I'm from Kenya, and you talked about raising capital from investors that are not very well aligned to the context of Cameroon and how the business environment looks like. What's your take on the opportunity to explore capital from local investors in Cameroon versus exploring abroad, like the US market, for instance?
Very good question. Very, very good. Thanks for asking. The answer is very simple in my opinion. Like it's just not the system is not, like the ecosystem is not there. Most angels in Cameroon are very risk averse. They prefer to sort of invest in the New York Stock Exchange, or like maybe start a family office in the US or something, and like invest in global businesses. So the local investing ecosystem is very nascent, very young, is very underdeveloped. So it just really didn't make, it wasn't there, like there wasn't that option. The local investors you see in Cameroon still have ties to like Western like organizations. So for instance, we've been working with a few of them. There may be like a European Union fund that has like an investment manager, management firm in Cameroon, but it's managing assets from this like larger external fund. But like actual local VCs run and started by locals or like local angels are not as big of a thing in Cameroon. In Nigeria, there might be the space seems to be growing, but still it's not really at the level at which, like, I mean, think about it. I think roughly, I might be wrong on these statistics, but like last year, Africa had the most VC funding. I think it was almost like $1 billion from like US-based VCs. It's the local component, like the local funding, it's almost several orders of magnitude lower than that. So even if you look at most of the companies that are making waves right now, a lot of them raise money externally. I'm not trying to say that's what you should do. I'm just trying to say, based on where the ecosystem is right now, that made the most sense, or that was the only option we had. Yes. And also one thing I'd like to add is, I think it's also the opportunity of growing up in these countries and then studying in the US, because now you understand the local context, but you've studied in the US that you could actually speak with US investors and sort of understand what they're looking for as well. So in another way to look at it is really like you're leveraging the opportunity that you have as someone who knows the local context, but also can speak the language of US investors. So that's really the nice sweet spot there where you could actually get some of this capital. Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much for sharing that. Your question, Duncan, really appreciate it. And also thank you, Pelkins, for sharing. So there are two more questions online that were submitted. And I also want to give a chance for Kevin to ask a question if he has, as well as Alice. So I'll just go online, then go back to Kevin if Kevin has a question. So the question is, I mean, you've kind of studied. What was the major difficulty when you started your business? I think I asked the question, right?
Yeah, you're talking about like the local realities of Cameroon and like.
Oh yeah. Then the other ones, what do you think is the most important when you start your business?
That's a hard one, because there are a couple of things. But if I were to pick one, I think I'll start with why businesses fail. So I'd ask a reverse question, like instead of asking what's the most important thing, I think the better way to tackle this would be like, what makes businesses fail So if you avoid some of these things, then your likelihood of success is higher. And I think it's not going after a large enough market. I think that's actually one of the biggest reasons. Of course, there are a bunch of other reasons like founder relationships, ability to raise capital. But I think if you're going after an idea that's big enough, and you're persistent about it, the capital is going to come. The right people, again, if you're persistent and diligent about how you work, you'd attract the right people, and over time, you'll be able to build this thing. So I'd say it's important to really understand market research. What's the size of this market? How big is this idea? How sustainable is it? I think these are really important things. So, and when I talk about big of an idea, you could think about it in my 3-part framework. We think about like, what are some switching costs involved in this idea? Like if someone else were to come in, like how the customers switch from you to someone else. Another thing, how can you benefit from economies of skill? Like if you had to you're producing X, if you're producing 100X, like the marginal cost, does that go down with time? And I think the last thing you'd have to think about is what are your unit economics, right? Like, does that really make sense at a fundamental level? So all of this really tying back to like how big the idea is and what the market is over time. So.
Awesome. So yeah, going back now to people here. Kevin, if you have a question, feel free to ask.
Hey everyone. Hey Pelkins, it's great to have you here. Thank you for joining us today. So I have a couple of questions really, and I guess I'd piggyback on, is that the expression, piggyback on Duncan's question about, let's call it foreign investment and what the implications are for ownership. You know, if you're thinking of CassVita, for example, when I look at the business, I think of it as, you know, something that Cameroonians and African folks can own, really, just conceptually. But then if you have funds flowing from the US and from wherever, really, how much of it is really, or how much of it, of the business can really be attributed to African people versus these foreign investors who don't really have the context and can they really claim ownership, really, or who gets to claim that ownership? So I guess I'll drop that first, and then maybe after you comment, I can touch on my second point.
Yeah, you're asking some really hard questions. Actually, these are some really pressing questions, and I really appreciate that. Like I mentioned, I wish there were a solid alternative. I really wish there were, but at least in my experience, that's what I've seen, and my experience might be limited. There might be others out there, but to answer your question, of course, when someone's funding you, there's especially equity funding, there's some percentage of it that goes away. I think the way to counter that, especially in businesses where you're trying to also have an impact, is finding impact money, impact investors. Some of these terms are actually like favorable. So like we're actually working with an investor right now, getting a 0% interest loan. So it's a loan, so there's no ownership. We've got to pay in 2 years, 0%. So like in many ways, it's very favorable. So I think, again, going back to aligning your financing model with your business model, like if your business model has a social impact and like a component to it that you're actually creating value in people's lives, I think you should find money that aligns with that, impact money. That said, not all impact money would be 0% interest loan. I mean, and 0% interest loan would be a very small amount of money. Like they wouldn't, like an impact investor wouldn't give you $3 million as a 0% interest loan. It's probably going to be equity funding. So I do agree with you that like there's some ownership loss over time. And it's just, I wish there were an alternative. I think it's at this point, it's really up to the entrepreneur to negotiate the different facets of the term sheet, like what the components of that are, and like how you're able to sort of leverage that. And one way we do it is we actually have, like, I mean, the way we think about how we work with investors in terms of like, it's really negotiating the components of the term sheet. So you could give like equity control, but there are other levers that could be pulled that could make the investors interested. So for instance, board seats, voting rights, these are other things. But again, it still boils down to losing control, right? Because if you're giving them less equity and giving them more voting rights, more board seats, then like they make the decisions for the business. You own the business, but someone else makes the decision. So I think it's really, it's an art and a science playing with the term sheets, like understanding different components. So you really want to understand what are the liquidation preferences, what are your voting rights, what are the board seats, what is the ownership control, what kinds of things the owners could elect versus the founders. Like, I think those are the little nuances where you could actually play with ownership and sort of get some leverage in terms of making decisions and really making sure if you're building such a business that benefits local people, it actually does.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that actually. And as you were speaking, I was just thinking of some of the creative ways that you can get around some of those, even as you plan your exit strategy. And since you're in CPG, I just think of Unilever and Ben & Jerry's, for example. So when Ben & Jerry's sold to Unilever, they sort of negotiated that Unilever will obviously take control of the company, but they grandfather them into some of their values, and so they have to remain committed to social justice causes and things like that. So yeah, I think there are ways, creative ways to negotiate that. The other thing I wanted to
thanks for sharing that, by the way. I mean, that was a really good example.
Yeah, of course, anytime. The other thing I wanted to pick your brain on was, through your CassVita experience or journey, how did you balance focusing on building a good product and the extraneous things like branding and so the product versus putting the word out there and advertising and things like that? At what point do you start prioritizing what over the other?
Yeah, so all of that falls into your GTM, your go-to-market strategy. So I think I'll start by saying different businesses require different percentages of that, like product versus like content generation and like marketing. But it's all a part of your GTM package. So for us, we needed a good product. Like you need a good product, like a product that's highly differentiated, it's defensible. We need something like that. But because we're CPG, we also rely a lot on like marketing, having great content out there, storytelling, and all of this other like aspects of it. So I guess in terms of GTM, when I think about it in terms of timelines, first, of course, you can't market something that doesn't exist for us, right? So we have to build the product first, but we also have to invest a lot in like the storytelling, which we're still doing, and we're still getting there. I don't think we're like really at the point where I personally would be like, I'm super comfortable, but we're getting there. So I guess in terms of timelines, I guess it's important to start that on both. But businesses are different. I think there's certain businesses, like maybe B2B SaaS, I don't think you need to be like, have strong content management and like branding, and you like flyers, packaging like are really a thing for, I mean, of course there's no packaging, but like it depends on the business. For CPG businesses, I think it's super important for you to really pay attention to like when a consumer sees your package, your brand, like how do they feel? What's that first like emotional reaction you're creating in them? Jacob shared our website. We've tried to convey that, and I'd be glad if you all can check it out and also give your own feedback and also try out the product. I mean, I'd be glad to hear your feedback on that. But yeah, to answer your question, like the go-to-market strategy is different for different businesses. For CPG, I think you need a good product. And I think you want to do marketing after you've built the product, because you're marketing the features. And then now you just add like content, theme, storytelling, branding to it afterwards.
So thank you so much. Just to make sure we're on time, Pelkins, thank you very, very much for making the time being here, for answering our questions, for sharing your story, for inspiring us, and most importantly, just for giving a positive outlook on Cameroon and Africa. That's kind of my takeaway. I'm sure. Hopefully, that's the takeaway for others. I want to thank Sion. She actually helped develop and did most of the design for this. So kudos to her as well. I really appreciate everyone who made the time to to be here. So thank you guys for being here. Please check out Pelkins startup. I shared the link, and we'll have a follow-up as well where you can actually get the link as well. For the review, we have a feedback form. Please just check it out as well. It's like less than 1 minute to complete that, just to check the performance of how this session went. So, so Pelkins, any last minute words for advice for entrepreneurs? So we can let you go study for your finals.
Yeah,
yes, finals tomorrow.
Got a strategy exam tomorrow. Maybe this is part of crafting my strategy for tomorrow. I'll say, like, if you really have an idea you feel passionate about, especially if you're in school, I think you should try it out. Like, there's so much to learn from a successful idea, also a lot to learn from one that's you decide you don't want to move ahead with for whatsoever set of reasons. I think being in school is actually the most ideal time because, like I mentioned, all these resources around. And I don't know if I'm speaking with students, people who are still in school, but I'm assuming I'm seeing Babson logo at the back, so I'm assuming. But like, I think this college time is really the best time to sort of explore that, and also to test if that's for you. And then I also just want to mention that, like, it's okay. Like, everybody doesn't necessarily have to be an entrepreneur. I'd be glad if everybody were. Like, there's so much value you could create in the world. But it's fine, like, if you wanted to try something else and like get different set of experiences, or if you don't want to try that now, it's okay. I think there's a lot of hype around like entrepreneurship being cool, sexy, like everybody wants to be one, which is great. But I think you want to make that call for yourself. Like personally, when you wake up in the morning and you're solving a problem to create opportunity, create a market, like, is that something that's fun for you? Do you really enjoy doing that? I mean, and if you don't, maybe you want to do something else. So, like, the first thing is, if you want to do entrepreneurship, best time to start is now. Second is, you don't have to do it. Like, there are other ways you could make a difference in the world, and that's totally fine. The most important thing is your work and your values need alignment. And if you find that somewhere else, that's great too. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Pelkins. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. For those in South Korea, have a wonderful morning. For those here, have a great evening. And Pelkins, would love to have you again. And good luck with your finals. So thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me. The questions were incredible. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sion, Duncan, Kevin, Alice, and of course, thank you, Jacob, for having me. This was very, it's really refreshing to share experiences. And yeah, looking forward to staying in touch. Different ways could add each other on LinkedIn or like however we want to stay in touch. But thank you. Yeah.
Of course. Bye, guys. Thank you, guys.
So much.
Bye. Okay.